Hello, you guys. So, I know we're told to love our country, and I think we have to love our country. But we cannot be a lapdog like the media. We have to be more of a watchdog for our politicians. That's part of what loving our country is about, is loving our country and not letting ourselves be gaslit by these politicians that are running things because they do not have our best interests at heart. I am just going to point out a couple things that maybe, don't seem as obvious, is the words that they use. They use the word oligarch. For example, instead of building ties with other countries, the US has decided that we have to be our politicians, that we have to be in control of everything. And what the media is not really reporting that much is that these other countries are building like another system, a financial system, a trading system, a military system, and that the US is getting weaker and weaker and weaker, but they will not tell you that on the news. So you have to watch some other things or just open your eyes a little bit and find out what's going on about how people are selling the dollar. China is starting to sell the dollar, how our dollar devaluation is coming, and it's going to hurt the banks a lot. It's going to hurt all of us a lot. The reason that people are so broke is because the top 3 billionaires in this country own more than the bottom half of the people combined, or something like that. But they don't want you to know that, They just try to say, well, we're the good guys and we have to fight these wars because we're the good guys. But really, they're just enriching themselves in this false need for control rather than building alliances and trading and exploiting the resources of other countries. And they use certain words, like they use the word, like they try to make other countries look bad. Now, I'm not saying these other countries are like angels. I think all leaders are corrupt. But I think we're more corrupt because we're starting wars everywhere where we have no business starting wars. You may remember what's called the Cuban Missile Crisis, which was when Russia put nuclear weapons in Cuba. And the US was ready to launch nuclear attack on Cuba. I think it was Cuba or Russia. And it was averted at the last moment because we're like, we don't want another country to have weapons so close to us. But when we put weapons in Ukraine under NATO in 2014, and Russia tries to negotiate, and finally just invades Ukraine, Russia's the bad guy. And confiscating the assets of Venezuelans, Russians, etc., has made these other countries go, well, we can't trust the US. We're going to build our own financial system. So we're just making enemies. But let me go to the words. They use the word oligarch. These Russian oligarchs, like it's some very evil thing. Well, an oligarch is just a billionaire. We have oligarchs in this country. And these oligarchs are running a lot of the show and making a lot of the decisions. Here are some of our oligarchs. Bernard Arnault, who I never heard of. Jeff Bezos is an oligarch. Elon Musk is an oligarch. Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Page, Bill Gates. I could go on and on. They're all oligarchs. We have oligarchs. The other word they use is regime. In order to devalue other legitimate governments, they call them a regime. The Iranian regime, the North Korean regime. Well, let's call it a US regime. The US regime. We have to start questioning the propaganda that the mainstream media is feeding us, because the media used to be, you love our country, you're supposed to have an independent press to push back against these politicians. But the press is no longer independent. They're not a watchdog, they're a lapdog. And CNN is a lapdog. MSNBC is a lapdog. They're lapdogs. So it's easy to fall under their spell because they're funny and they're entertaining and they have these nice studios and they're well dressed and they seem so well-meaning, but they don't have our best interests at heart. Then they say other countries don't allow free speech. But you have a bunch of students peacefully protesting at college campuses, and the police are brought in. And then the news spins it. You always get a couple crazy people when there's a protest. Sometimes the other side intentionally pays them and brings them in. Other times it's just someone like, this is a fun protest, and they cause a bunch of chaos. Then the media takes that 1% of the people causing chaos and blows it up and smears the entire group as being like some kind of rebels, some kind of terrorists. And then people believe it. And now let's go to Israel. The US war machine is funding Israel. You cannot blame Israel for killing the Palestinians. You have to blame our politicians. Okay, they want war, they want control. It's their foothold in the Middle East. And sure, Israel might have paid them off for their own reasons, but I still don't understand why the Palestinian land was stolen from them to give to Israel. I think that caused a lot of problems. I don't really get all that history. Somehow Israel just was like, this is our land, get out, and it's never been peaceful since. Like, we just killed off the Indians and put them on a reservation, and they were fine with it. But that was a long time ago, and you can't really do that anymore. What we did to the Indians was horrible, by the way. But I'm not some world expert, but what I'm saying is that the U.S. needs war. The politicians need war to survive, because instead of investing money in our growth like China is doing and Russia is doing, we're putting that money into war. That's why people are broke, because the billionaires, our oligarchs in our regime are making money off war. And without war, who are we? We don't even know. We haven't won a war ever. Have we ever? Since the Civil War, have we ever won a war? But it's just a way to keep the money machine going. And so the US is responsible for all those deaths, but if you say anything about it, they try to silence you by calling you a name like, oh my God, you are an anti-Semite, or you're a Hamas supporter, or whatever. And it's just really sad what's going on now. There's only one candidate on the ballot, not even on the ballot. She is not on the ballot yet in New York, who is Jill Stein. And I like the stuff she's saying about getting out of all these wars, building alliances and diplomacy, and taking care of our people at home and taking care of the dollar. I'm very concerned. I've always been concerned about these forever wars, which make no sense. And I've always been concerned about the rising debt that we're in, that we can never repay, and that other countries will eventually sell our treasuries, and we're going to have a financial collapse. And all the money in our stocks, and all the money in our bank accounts, and all the money that we have is going to be worthless. And we're heading there. The sign's already there. China has already been selling their treasuries, reducing their reserves of treasuries. They've been buying gold. China and Russia are now building a competitive system to the SWIFT system for doing monetary transfers. And Saudi Arabia, which holds so many treasuries, when they start selling them off, because they're kind of interested in being part of BRICS, we're going to have a huge fucking problem. Our politicians do not give a shit. Excuse my language. Our politicians are not doing anything to prevent this or to remedy this. And I'm sure all of our oligarchs have money in other currencies, in other holdings all over the world. They're going to be just fine. So just like we're using Ukraine as a proxy war to try to weaken Russia, and we're willing to sacrifice every last Ukrainian, the US politicians are willing to sacrifice every last American to get their money, to keep their power, to keep their control. They're willing to sacrifice every little one of us. And the last thing they gaslight us about is that if you vote for anyone other than one of them, the Uniparty, the Democrats or Republicans, who are all in cahoots with this war stuff, if you vote for anyone other than that, your vote is meaningless. That's how they gaslight you. You have to vote for one of us, because otherwise your vote is nothing. That's how they devalue us. And thank God for YouTube that we can even say these things. And then they also devalue the vote by making incredibly difficult hurdles for independent party candidates to get on the ballot. Now, I understand you don't want just any person like me coming along and getting on every ballot, like nobody has heard about me. But there are legitimate candidates who are kept off the ballot by very onerous requirements. And that they have all of these tactics. They say we're a democracy, but we're not. It's kind of like an authoritarian regime, really, that we have. They make it very difficult for anyone who's not a Republican or Democrat to get on the ballot. Now, John F. Kennedy Jr. looks like he's going to be on the ballot in every state, which is a miracle, actually. And Jill Stein, I think, will be on the ballot in every state because I think the Green Party has been on there for a while. I don't really follow all this very closely, but it's they want to keep their power. And even John F. Kennedy Jr., he has not talked about the devaluing the dollar or the military at all. He's probably a better step. He's a step forward away from this power grab that's dragging us down. But ideally, we would have someone more like Jill Stein, who is going to use our natural resources as powerful trading partners and alliances and to reinvest in our country and to keep the value of our dollar. I have money in my savings. I don't want to lose it all. I think people who have money should be worried about this. Even people who are broke should be worried about this, because what they're doing is just extracting your resources and having you a wage slave and letting you think that you have power so that you'll keep working harder. As long as you vote for one of them, the only way out is to select and vote for different candidates. And one more thing I want to say, as much as they make it difficult for these other people to get on the ballots, they try to make it very easy for illegal people to vote for one of them. I don't think you even have to show an ID to vote. So I just think it's really helpful to listen to many different viewpoints and have platforms for many different ideas. A socialist party, a communist party, a green party, a libertarian party, the Democrats, the Republicans, the independents. Have all these different voices, because that's exciting to hear new ideas. Like, how can we improve our country? None of these Democrats or Republicans ever talk about how to improve our country. How are we going to get out of debt? No one ever talks about how we're going to get out of debt, how we're going to pay our Social Security obligations that we've made, why we're in so many wars, why is no other country in all these wars, why we've never won a war, why we have to keep fighting wars, why despite Russia and China wanting to build alliances with us, we keep turning it down, why we keep tearing up peace treaties, breaking our promises, breaking international law, and then we say like we're the good guys. We're being gaslit by our politicians. Our politicians are like an abusive, controlling boyfriend. They're not in your face, it's not that obvious, but behind the scenes, devaluing your productivity, stealing your productivity, devaluing the dollar, causing inflation, and then telling you if you just work harder, it's all your fault. While they themselves are enriching themselves, embezzling from us pretty much while they're gaslighting us. So unless you hear different ideas, you're going to believe them. I don't even know. I think a lot of people don't even watch the news because instinctively they know it's all bullshit. But I'm going to put a link in the description to this interview I just watched. I've watched a few interviews with Jill Stein, and she was interviewed today with her policy advisor. And I think it's good. He's actually like an economist. Dr. Jill Stein and Michael Hudson. Michael Hudson is president of the Institute for the Study of Long-Term Economic Trends. He's a professor of economics at the University of Missouri in Kansas City, and he has written books about economics, the bubble, trade, foreign debt, the myth of aid, American empire, and that's the stuff we should be talking about. The myth of our aid, how we pillage other countries. I just want someone to be honest with me. Okay, this is what I crave. I crave honesty, and I crave ideas and creativity and progress. I want something exciting. What we have now is just death. It's just death and destruction. Like, it's just ick. So I'm really excited, but their Green Party is pro-worker, anti-war, with climate action agenda front and center. I don't know if I believe in all this climate stuff, but I do think that, you know, I don't have to believe everything they say. And maybe these people aren't perfect either, but somehow I'm drawn to their ideas. But if you've never heard of Dr. Jill Stein, and you might think, well, let me hear another opinion on something, you might enjoy this interview. This is Dialogue Works. I watch his stuff to keep up with what's going on in the Middle East, in Ukraine and Russia and Israel. And he's a pretty good interviewer. He just asks questions and lets the guests talk. I think he's really good. Anyway, thanks you guys for watching my video. What will become of this country on this path that we're on, like this path of destruction? I crave authenticity, beauty, and power that comes from love and not death. Real power, good ideas, opportunities for everyone, health, productivity, growth, life. That's what I crave. What about you?